All right, what's up, guys? I just wanted to do a very quick live Q&A because I haven't done a live in, I don't know, 4 or 5 days, whatever it's been. And this is something I really want to start doing on a daily basis over time, start making it part of, I don't know, my content strategy, whatever you want to call it, because I think live streams, first of all, they push me to get better at public speaking, to do this in one take. I can't just re-record again and again. But then for you guys, it also allows me to directly engage with you, answer your questions, and have it not just be about what I think you want, what I think you need, but to actually, be interacting with you guys. And then um with that said, I do want to mention that the level above that, the level above just watching a live stream, is to do actual group coaching calls, is to actually be put in the hot seat, so to speak, to be put in a position where you're actually going to have a conversation with me. I'm going to be pushing you in the right direction, finding out what your blind spots, what your bad habits might be, what's holding you back from getting to the next level, and help you get there. And that's something that you can access in my new free, by the way, free mastermind group, which I've just posted a link to on school.com, which, if you don't know, it's a platform that, it's similar in some ways to something like Discord or Telegram or whatever, but it has a few features those don't. One being it integrates group coaching calls, and then secondly, it integrates a leaderboard and achievement system where people who are participating, where people are engaging with the group, asking questions, adding value, they get rewarded. And they get rewarded with things like free premium courses, for example. So I highly recommend joining that, because that is, there's already been a number of people in the group who've posted that since joining the group, they did their very first cold approach in their life, right? So just having the momentum of being around other people, of being engaged in the community, of joining these calls, which, by the way, our next free call is going to be this evening in just a few hours. But by having all those things in place, by having the achievement system, by having rewards, by doing that, being a part of that, you are far more likely to take action, to feel this pull, this magnetic pull towards success. And not only has there been several people who've done their first approach, there's been a lot of other success stories, guys getting dates. And I believe at least one guy has already had his first cold approach lay, right? So not his first, like not losing his virginity, but getting laid from cold approach for the first time. So I highly recommend joining that. Now, with that said, this is going to be a quick Q&A. It'll probably go 10, 20, 30 minutes. It's not going to be very long. I've got a lot on my schedule right now, but I just decided I would stop by and just, get things going. Kisses are pretty fun. Yes, they are. Do you have to kiss the girl if you don't like doing that? What do you mean? That is such a strange question. Why, like, if you don't like kissing a girl, I mean, the most obvious explanation is you might want to, look into your sexuality. You might just be really bad at it, or the women you're kissing might be really bad at it, or some combination. So yeah, that's strange to me. I can't imagine why you wouldn't like kissing a girl. Maybe if you're really uncomfortable while doing it and it feels like a lot of pressure, uh, sure, but like you're going to feel more pressure when you're actually hooking up, right? When you're actually in the bed. So it's something that you're just going to have to get over. And pretty much most women are going to want that. You're right in terms of in the process of escalation. It also, it's good for your own confidence too, because you realize women are attracted to you, they like you, and you don't have to like go all the way to the bedroom to like actually sleeping with women to get that boost of confidence. So there's a lot of reasons why you should do that, and not doing that would be a good afternoon. Why it would be odd not to do that. It's irrational, yes, and it's going to hold you back. So I would really think about that. Think about how you're going to change that. So I'm going to be looking through the questions. I just don't like it. Well, okay, my question would be, if you don't like kissing, do you like sex? Because if you like that, you're going to have to go through some things that maybe you don't like, right? You have to go through approach anxiety. You have to go through the fear of rejection. You have to, go through uh, weird experiences when you go out where like another guy comes in and steals your girl, or where the boyfriend comes in, or where you have a really awkward interaction. There's going to be things you don't like to get anything you do like, right? Right. Like for me, um, I've in the last couple months, I gained like 10 pounds. And that was because I wasn't doing the things I didn't like, right? That's what led me there, is because I wasn't following the proper diet, and because I wasn't working out enough, etc. And that leads to worse outcomes. So you got to choose between short term and long term. Yeah, there you go. I mean, it could definitely have to do with that. The other question I'd say to Hubert is, how many women have you kissed? Because that makes a very big difference in my answer. All right, let's see if this is a good question. Some of the girls seem receptive because they were asking questions and stuff, but they're also mainly looking at their phone. What does that mean? If they're mainly looking at their phone, I mean, partly it's kind of a personality flaw to an extent, um, but the most pertinent explanation is that you're just not very engaging. Is that basically you're too low energy, right? A low energy Jeb, right? If you remember Trump's the what he called Jeb Bush, you're like low energy Jeb. You're just, oh hey, what's up? How's it going? Where are you from? Right? It's a sign that you are too low energy and that you need to speak with more passion, more enthusiasm. Also, say things that are a little less bland, a little less boring. And if you do say things that are bland, do it in an ironic way, right? Like if you're going to say, where are you from? What do you do? Then just like take it to the extreme, take it so far that it becomes funny. And at least then that's interesting. But basically, it means you're just not being engaging enough. Your eye contact probably isn't intense enough, because if you make piercing eye contact by itself, you will instantly be engaging, right? Just that by itself. If you're making piercing, intense eye contact and you're thinking, I want you, you're thinking about how much you desire the woman, right? How attracted and interested in her you are, you will be engaging. She's not going to want to look at her phone because you provide more positive emotions than her phone. So if she's looking at her phone a lot, it means her phone provides more positive emotions than talking to you, which means you got to step up the engagement, step up the passion, and put a little more effort into the conversation. You got to think of this as something where you get back what you put into it. The more effort you put into an interaction, the more she's going to put effort in as well. The more value you give, the more value you get. This is called reciprocation in influence psychology. You can read the book Influence by Robert Cialdini, which talks about it. It talks about all the 6 main influence triggers, one of which is reciprocation. And they're all I wouldn't say proven, because nothing's really proven in psychology, but they're all supported by a lot of scientific evidence, and he goes into that evidence. But reciprocation is whenever you give someone something, they want to give you something back. For example, the Hare Krishnas, they'll give you a flower or a copy of the Bhagavad Gita, and they give you that, and then you feel compelled to give them a donation, right? Then they ask for a donation and you feel guilty not to do it. So the same thing, if you're talking to a woman and you're spiking her emotions, you're making her have fun, you're putting in a lot of effort in terms of being engaging, then she is going to want to put in effort back. But if you're kind of low energy, you're not putting, you're talking just like your milk toast is the best word to describe it, which just means kind of like low energy. I mean, it means lacking charisma, lacking unique personality, right? You're just kind of flatlined. If that's you, then she's going to reciprocate, right? She's going to return the energy you give her. So if women seem, and this is true for any negative characteristic that you see, most women seem to have X characteristic, it means you're giving off an energy that is making them reply to you that way. So if they're not sexual and they seem to see you very platonically and they don't seem to, be flirtatious, well, it's because you are not being flirtatious, you are not being sexual, and they're reciprocating the I don't know, what could you call limp dick energy that you're giving them, or the neutered energy that you're giving them. So that's something I would really consider. And I hope that wasn't too harsh, but I prefer to give an answer that is, the harsh truth that you actually need to hear, rather than, just telling you what you want to hear. Appreciate that. That's a specific question, but yes, I would say very much so. There's pros and cons because Vegas has a lot of Asians that are actually from those countries, that are from China or from wherever. And, for example, Japanese women that are from Japan and Korean women that are from Korea. It's not impossible, but a lot of them, first of all, they don't speak English, so that kind of makes it impossible. And a lot of them are very difficult to pick up because the way they're socialized, the way they're raised, talking to strangers is just, as far as I know, it's just not normal, right? It's just not something you really do, and they kind of stick to their groups a lot more. So those women tend to be, there's exceptions, but they tend to be very difficult to pick up. However, there's also tons of Asian women who are like from LA or whatever, right? And they tend to be, just as easy as anyone else to pick up. And there are a very high ratio of Asians in Vegas. I would say probably it's the highest ratio. The other ones that come to mind are, generally California, right? So if you want the highest ratio Asian city, it would be like Seattle. The problem with Seattle is that the average attractiveness is not as high as a lot of other major cities. I mean, bro, look, I have no problem with this question. I don't know if there's pickup channels for gay men, but that would probably be a better resource. However, I will say that yes, I mean, for men, it's way easier, right? I think I read somewhere that gay men on average have like 100 sexual partners. So it's actually like way easier. Probably there's a lack of pickup advice for gay men because they don't need it because men are so much simpler when it comes to sex, right? They're just like, why not? So just go to gay bars, download the gay dating apps, and it's much easier. Could you improve your results? I'm sure you could by doing whatever different things, but why wouldn't pickup work for gay men? It's just easier. Yeah. So generally, I would say you should be leading within really like 2 to 5 minutes, maybe 10, somewhere in that range. Sometimes even faster if it's really on. Just take her straight to the dance floor, take her straight to a different area. But it's much more common that guys don't lead enough, they don't escalate enough, they don't sexualize enough than it is the other way around. And the guys that are a little bit pushy, and never be too pushy, but that are a little bit on the pushy side, like, hey, let's go. Hey, I have an after party. Even if they're awkward, like I knew one guy who I thought must have autism because he was just so awkward the way he talked. He just didn't seem to register, social cues like people who autism do. And this guy was also not good looking. And this was in LA. It was actually the Bungalow. I'm going to be going to an LA for a boot camp this weekend, but it was in the Bungalow in Santa Monica. And I saw this guy get rejected harshly again and again and again and again. But every time he was approaching girls, and I didn't even want to be around him or wing with him because I did a couple times and he was just like, hey, I have an after party nearby. It's just 5 minutes away. He was doing that like really, really fast and not building any attraction or like rapport or anything. And I thought there's no way this guy's ever going to pull. And then later in the night, and I was actually pulling myself, but later in the night, I was with this girl and I saw him with a girl who was shockingly hot. It was like she was like a 9 out of 10 in my look scale. She looked like a model, and not like a new model where it's, chubby women, like a model from the 90s when they were actually hot. And he pulled her and he said he slept with her. I can't confirm that for sure, but it looked like it was on. And I've seen a lot of examples of guys like that where they're a little bit awkward, but they just have no hesitation going for it, right? They just go for it and they'll just go, 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 go. And they don't care about the awkwardness. They don't care about feeling like, oh, that was cringe. Their ego isn't affected. And those guys do very well. Now, they would do a lot better if they were also smooth. But if you had to choose between being smooth and being someone that really goes for it, being someone who really goes for it would be the better of the two. And yeah, that was a very interesting experience. It was during an RSD hot seat, I think it was. And it was a night where the girl I pulled, I actually got her to get on her knees and beg to have sex with me. Not in a like she wanted to. It was a role play, a BDSM role play, basically, where I went from initially just I was about to make out with her, and then let me think exactly what I said. I was about to make out with her, and it's like, and I pulled away, and then I said, "Say please, make out with me." And then she's like, "Okay, please make out with me." And then I added, "Master, please make out with me, master." And then eventually, when I actually took her to her place, took it all the way to her getting on her knees and begging me to come home with her. And I was with my friend, and he was in awe of this whole thing because first of all, she was really hot, and he kept talking about, damn, she was hot. Like that was cool. And also, literally just getting this full on role play. Now that's not going to work on every woman, but there's some who have the archetype where they really like that dominant submission thing, the whole 50 Shades of Grey thing. It's a lot, but not all. And if you sense a woman has that kink playing into it, that's like her sexual fantasy. Like that'll have the best sex of her life, right? And it's actually doing her a favor. It's more, I mean, you get the power trip or whatever, but it's really more for her than it is for you. So that was a great night where I had a good time, but also, perhaps even more importantly, I just saw this guy who had no game. He was maybe a 5 out of 10 looks wise, right? He wasn't ugly, but he wasn't good looking. And he pulled a really hot girl through sheer willpower, right? Just going for it so hard. I mean, this is because I'm not gay. I don't know. There's no like particular reason. Just don't have the interest. I don't have a problem with it. Um, uh, pros and cons to any ethnicity, right? I would say I'd probably be more likely to marry a Latina between the two. In terms of one night stands, there's really pros and cons to each, so I couldn't really give you a solid answer. But I find a lot of Asian women, because their culture is more collectivist and because they're less outspoken, and you don't necessarily know what they're thinking and what they want, and they tend to be less like funny, just on average, right? Like just less expressive, and fiery is the word for Latinas. So I would say if I had to choose, although I've dated both, but if I had to choose, I'd probably go with Latinas. But especially like Argentinians, Brazilians, Cubans, and certain parts of Mexico, like to get really specific. And then among Asians, I especially generally like Filipinos. Okay. Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, that's only one example. It's a small sample size, but there is a cultural difference. It doesn't mean it can't be done, right? They're still women, and they don't have some kind of law. Like if you're in a Muslim country where they have Sharia law, then they can't have one night stands. It's literally against the law. So don't expect that to work. But anywhere else where there's not some kind of like serious religious, hard rule against it, you can make it work. And even in some cases, like Mormons, I had a client 2 weeks ago who's from Utah, the Mormon capital of the country, and he said he's taken multiple Mormon girls' virginity. So it can be done sometimes. And I remember someone asked about how long do you have to meditate to get the benefits to reduce anxiety? I would say at least 10 minutes a day, but the more you do, the more benefits you'll get. It's just how much can you realistically get yourself to follow through with. But there was a period where I was doing like 2 hours a day of meditation, and I felt amazing during that period. Like I had so much gratitude that I didn't have before, and so many experiences of just pure presence where it sounds narcissistic, but the only way to explain it is it feels like being a god or something. Like when you're fully 100% present, you just feel like I can do anything. I am at one with the universe. It's the best feeling probably in life. So really, obviously my channel isn't about meditation, but it does help with game indirectly. Just being more present will help you like deal with tension, deal with the fear of rejection, things like that. To some extent, don't think it'll replace approaching, because you have to approach as well. You can't just use that as a crutch. That's a bad idea. But it does help with game, and then it helps with anxiety, and it helps with just enjoying life more in general. So it's one of the best things you can do. All right, probably answer a couple more questions. I only have 10 minutes tops available. I mean, I don't think no, I mean that guy wasn't literally autistic. I don't think there's obviously a lot of cons to autism. So I don't want it to be like, oh, if you have autism, it's super easy. That's not true, right? But there are some ancillary benefits with the fact that people who are autistic tend to not notice rejection the same way, and they don't tend to take it as personally, and it tends to be easier for them to take massive action. right? And just go for it. Just, even though they might do it in an uncalibrated way, they'll go for the number and go for the pull, things like that. So there are parts of it that are positive that you can learn from, but overall, it's not like an advantage. So I need to see a couple things. I need to know, I need to see the pictures because pro photos are not all the same, right? If you got $100 photographer from like Craigslist or something, they might not be good at all. And then again, and if you have an amazing photographer, they can literally like 100x the amount of matches you get. So there's a lot of variety. How good the photographer is, how good their equipment is, et cetera, et cetera. And then the other thing is how much have you swiped? Because it doesn't automatically, this is an important thing to be aware of, just getting new pictures doesn't automatically reset your elo score and get you tons more matches right away. It takes time because basically the algorithm will slowly pick up. It's like changing your elo score in chess, right? It happens, or I guess more people probably would play League of Legends, going from gold to diamond or Overwatch or whatever, right? Just going up in ranks. It happens over time because you already had your initial rank set, right? And then it slowly can increase, but you have to be swiping like, at least 15 minutes a day. And then you'll, after a week or two, really see a drastic change, but it's not immediate. And if you want to sidetrack that or fast track that, the way you do that is by, instead of just adding your new pictures to your old account, buy a basically burner phone, buy some like $100 iPhone 8, something along those lines, buy a $15, $20 month of service, and then use that to make a new account with the new pictures. And then once that account is established, then you can switch it to the old phone. And I do want to mention in a few hours, I'm going to be doing a live group coaching call, which is, it's a level higher than just doing this, because here I can answer your questions, but you're not actually getting one-on-one coaching, right? You're not actually getting, instant feedback where I can go much deeper, right? And help you a lot more. And that's completely free to join on my new mastermind group, which has a lot more features. But it has a lot more features, including, obviously, there's the discussion. It can help you find wings in a variety of different cities. Like if you're in a smaller town, there's a good chance there's no members there yet. But any major city, there's already a good chance that you'll be able to find some wings, and that's going to be expanded over time. And then you also will get access to premium content as you contribute to the group, as you take action. You basically get rewarded for that. You get, it's like achievement points, right? You get ranks. And as you increase in ranks, you get access to more content, which gives you this, the same dopamine loop that playing video games, right? Where you get achievements, you get higher ranks, new armor, whatever it is. Over time, it's using that same model, but for something that's actually positive for your life. So I highly recommend joining it, completely free to do so. And there will be a link in the description below. Yeah, well, that's kind of one of the reasons why I like the term God mode in pickup, because God mode is a version of presence, right? It's specifically when you're interacting socially, but it's a version of presence, right? It's a version of being very in the moment and you actually get to a point where you're in control of your own emotions. It's kind of crazy. Normally, your emotions control you, right? But when you're in a strong enough flow state, you can actually feel the emotions you want to feel, and it almost feels like Jedi, maybe Sith is better, but Jedi like mind powers, right? Where you feel, and it seems like you can, as far as I can tell, control other people's emotions. Not like 100%, but you can influence their emotions a lot more than you normally could. You can just look at a woman and you want her to laugh and she'll start laughing, or you want her to feel attracted, she'll start feeling attracted. It's crazy. It's kind of like, it sounds bizarre. It might sound hard to believe, but if you haven't been in that state, it's hard to relate to, right? And that's something to work towards. But state is extremely powerful. And that's why I like the term God mode, right? Because it feels like, being in God mode. I don't want to say being a god because that just sounds so intense, but it kind of does, to be honest. Yeah, I didn't know that, but that makes a lot of sense, right? That explains it, because one of the things I hear the most on boot camps is the bystander effect, is the feeling of judgment from other people. That's what they're concerned about when it comes to cold approach. What is this question? It's so weirdly specific. It's a 6.8. You should add, like, it's a 6.8.34. Like, what do you mean it's 6.8? How did you come to that conclusion? Did Wheat Waffles give you a rating? Anyway, if 5 is average on your scale, plenty of average guys have dating success. I mean, they only exist because they had average parents, right? You just got to, the logical thing is they wouldn't exist if average men couldn't get laid. The average kids wouldn't exist. So yes, of course you can, right? Plenty of average guys do great. So if you're a 5 out of 10, you can have success. If you're a 6 out of 10, even better. If you're a 6.8, 0.4, whatever, even better. Yeah, I mean, if anything, a lot of them prefer men who are slightly older. On a biological level, there's a lot of evidence that women, first of all, cross-culturally, women on average date men who are 3 years older. That's pretty much a universal in every culture. There might be 1 or 2 exceptions, but that's the overall difference. So they tend to be attracted to older men because a woman's value in terms of what makes her sexually desirable, a lot of it has to do with fertility. And that decreases over time. A man's fertility, it decreases very, very, very slowly. But his other types of value, right? Like him having social connections, having money, all those kinds of things, they increase. So that's why someone like George Clooney can be a sex symbol in his 50s. How many women, there might be some people who think 50-year-old women or a 50-year-old woman is very attractive, but there's never anything on the same level, right? There's not going to be ever a 50-year-old woman who's hotter than she was when she was 20, unless she's like lost 100 pounds or something, then maybe. But it's a very big difference. And generally, men, they come into their own, they become more mature, they become more grounded, they become more masculine as they get older. So that's not a big deal. If anything, it's more likely than when you're 18. Yeah, I haven't experienced this. I've hooked up with women far younger, even recently. Thank you. Grind never stop. Yeah, this is very difficult. Hey, what's up, Ray? This is a hard one to answer. How important each is. They're all important. Looks versus game versus money. I'd say money is the least important unless you get to the extremes. Because money, when you approach, there's no way that money really makes a difference. Like you can be wearing Armani or something, and that might very slightly help, just having better fashion. You can afford a, better haircut, things like that. But if you can get into the venue, it doesn't really, like, how is it going to make a difference? Like in terms of long-term dating and a girl wanting to keep you around, it can start to factor in. But if anything, rich guys tend to supplicate more and tend to do worse. I have plenty of rich clients, and they struggle because they're rich. So, and me, like I'm not rich, but I am, wealthy. I don't know. I make more money than average for sure, but I have not noticed any benefits to that, except if you can get more freedom of time. And I need to clean the dog shit in the yard better so that there aren't flies around. But anyway, I would say in terms of status, you can get better logistics, right? So I lived until very recently on the Las Vegas Strip, and I'm probably going to move to like Old Town Scottsdale soon. That's my plan, or maybe Austin downtown. And being able to afford the rent in a very good location where you're walking distance from the clubs, that's helpful, right? But that's kind of ancillary. It's not like direct lead an advantage having more money. And then if you can have enough money that you can have more time, that's an advantage too. But otherwise, money is not an advantage at all. And then in terms of game versus looks, it's very hard to say. I mean, it's very hard to quantify, and anyone who can give a very strong answer they don't really understand how complex it is. All I can say is that I've seen very average and below average guys crush it, and I've seen very good looking guys struggle, and the opposite, of course, too. But it's something that can be made up for. You should maximize over time. Why not, right? It's not going to hurt to improve your looks, because you can. If you're like morbidly obese, you could potentially, in some cases, go from like a 3 to a 9. Now, that's not average, but you can definitely at least go up 2-3 points in terms of looks. So something you should do long term. But a lot of the hottest girls I slept with was when I was in the worst shape and when I, was dressed the worst, etc. So does it make a difference? Yes. Should you improve it? Yes. Is it 50-50, 70-30, 60-40, 80-20? I don't know because it's very hard to quantify something so amorphous. Makes a difference. Generally, people who think their looks are what's holding them back are kind of lying to themselves and using that as an excuse. That's the most important point, because most guys I know who say, "Oh, I think my looks are holding back," they've never even approached, or maybe like done one or two approaches in their life, and they're telling themselves it's their looks, right? So that is a very easy trap to get into mentally, and you shouldn't really think about it until you're at, once you've approached 100 women in a week, then you can start to evaluate, oh, if I got 0 numbers and every girl said fuck off and said you're a troll, something like that, then you can start to be concerned. But you shouldn't draw that conclusion when you've barely even scratched the surface of taking action and having game, right? If your game's a 0 to 10, the amount of action you're taking is a 0 to 10, then your results are going to be a 0 to 10 no matter what your looks are. And I would also add, it shouldn't just be game versus looks versus money. It should be game versus looks versus money versus action taking, right? How many women you're asking out, how consistent you are with approaching, things like that, because that is just as big of a factor as any of the others, right? And that's one that's just kind of easy to brush aside, but it's so important. And the last thing I'll add is that it is more important online. So you have to keep online dating. Looks will get you a lot farther. However, if you have bad quality pictures, being good looking, you'll still probably get mediocre results. But if you're obese, it's going to be very hard to get really good results with online dating. You can do okay, but you're not going to get amazing results. So getting into better shape is going to help massively with online dating. So there is that. All right, so I'm about to wrap up. I ended up going longer than I was supposed to because I always just get into rant mode. But I'm about to wrap up. I'm going to be doing another live call, but it's actually going to be a coaching call on this group, which is completely free to join later this evening. And that's where basically I'll be giving each person who joins, time in the hot seat where I'm going through and helping give them a game plan, give them specific steps to take to get to the next level. So it's not just talking to everyone and answering a question, it's much more in depth. Yeah, that's the thing that's crazy to me, right? Like, I mean, let's be real. Black pillars tend to have a lot of traits in common, right? Just like, what is it? It's comorbidity. Basically, just like, having anxiety is comorbid with depression and with other things, like substance abuse, for example. Um, and isolation. Uh, Being a black pillar is comorbid with a bunch of other qualities, one of which is being a social outcast, being a recluse who doesn't go out much. Another one is being very poor. Another one is like being very inactive physically, right? Just watching tons of content and not really doing anything with their lives. There's a lot of things that go along with being black pillars. So it's not surprising. They're not, people are going to clubs and noticing all the, average, below average guys with hot women. And then they create this whole fantasy world because they're so departed from the real world because they're never in it. They're probably in some, MMO online games and stuff like that, but they're never actually engaging with the real world. So they become divorced from it. And then they become very vulnerable to becoming, to being manipulated, right? To being controlled by a narrative, by an ideology that makes them feel important, that makes them feel like a victim, that makes them feel like they're special in a very sad way, but nonetheless makes them feel special and like they have an enemy. You can do night game without drinking alcohol, right? That's the ideal. If you only do day game, why are you also avoiding dating apps? Very few people should avoid dating apps, right? If you're obese, you should get to a point where you're not obese first. But other than that, like unless you're already crushing it, I wouldn't. like crushing it with day game, I would definitely also use dating apps, right? Like draw from all sources, right? If you're in a point where overall you have a scarcity of results, why, especially since online dating, like once you set up the profile and have good pictures, it's like 10, 15 minutes a day to keep it going. It's not hard, right? And you can do it while you're taking a dump, right? Like you can do it any time. So it's really something you might as well use to your advantage. Now, can you get to a high level with only day game? Absolutely, you can. To some extent, it depends on the city you're in. So if you're in a medium or small city that doesn't have really good day game options, if it has a good university, you can still make that work as long as you're in an age range. I'm not going to tell you where the cutoff is, but if you're 40, I probably wouldn't be doing college day game. But if you're, especially if you're like 18 to 21, and there's a large college, you can do amazing just from that. If you're in a city, otherwise, if you're in a city that's good for day game, for example, ones that come to mind that are really solid are like Austin, Texas, Miami, New York City, Chicago. And then there's other ones that are not as good, like Phoenix. Again, if you're in the college age range, is amazing. Otherwise, for day game, it's fine. It's not bad, but it's not amazing, right? There's enough volume that you can do pretty well, but it's not incredible. So it'd be very odd not to also do some night game. The vast majority of people, I think you should do both, but you could hypothetically get to a very high level with just day game, but it's going to generally be more difficult. Yeah, very few. And you should be very proud of yourself if you can do it. Like even before you're getting great results, you should have a level of pride because you're doing something most men are too afraid to do, right? You're already above most men in a very real way just by the fact that you can cold approach. There's a lot of reasons. One reason is that I am someone who I'm not against one night stands, but I'm someone who prefers seeing women again and again, like when I like them. And there's a lot of women I met in Vegas who they go back to like Hungary or something. There was one in particular that, went back to Hungary, and was so sad. Like I really liked her. I want to keep seeing her. Or goes back to California or wherever. And, you could maybe fly them out or go to them, but you're not going to see them because all the attractive women are generally on the strip, and the strip is like 90% tourists. And the 10% that aren't tourists are largely strippers and hookers, which I usually am not that into. Well, especially the hookers, but, even strippers, usually I just don't like them that much. I mean, they can be hot, but I usually don't like their personalities. So the women that are locals are either not very attractive or are those. So it's just not great for like having a rotation, having women that you see again and again, that's just more what I prefer. And also Vegas, the culture in Vegas as a local is not nearly as good to me. Like the kind of people that you're going to meet as friends, or just the overall situation is not as good as somewhere like Austin or somewhere like Phoenix, San Diego. Those are the kinds of cities that I think are better, at least for what I want, right? If you were someone who's new to game, Vegas would probably be the best city to move to. I mean, New York would be another option if you really prefer day game, but Vegas is one of very few cities that you can go to a club on a Monday that is packed, on a Tuesday that is packed, and you could do 50 approaches a night every night. And so if you're new, if you have the lifestyle, like you work on your laptop and you're new to game and you want to take things to another level as fast as possible, moving to Vegas would be a very solid option. It's something that I would highly recommend if you can make that happen, because just for like 3 months or so, just to get the cold approach handled, right? To just take massive action. It's very useful for that. Yeah, man. Scottsdale, in terms of like average attractiveness, is it's mostly blondes, right? It's mostly like it skews very white, so you have to like that. But in terms of average attractiveness, Scottsdale is one of the best places in the country. I think the other one that comes to mind for me would be Miami, and Miami is largely Latina, right? So if depending on which of those two you might prefer, those for the highest average level of attractiveness, those are both amazing. Phoenix, Scottsdale also doesn't really have the VIP issue that somewhere like Vegas does, right? Where like women are at VIP tables, that it makes it harder to like, you can sometimes make it work, but it's much more difficult. Whereas, the clubs in somewhere like Phoenix are free to all, and the whole place, anyone can talk to anyone. So it's better for that reason too. Maybe I'll start making. I do want to make it something that's very scheduled, so it's very consistent. So that's something I'm working out. But I will, once I have a schedule, I'll start announcing that and making it very clear. Yeah, kind of. Mm, fat beginner. I mean, how fat? How much of a beginner? Right? There's so many different factors. The best things you can do to increase the likelihood is make sure that you are clear in your intent, make sure that you are like moving things forward, actually asking the girls out, actually if it's night game, like leading them, trying to move them to the dance floor, things like that, and inviting women home and trying, like going for it, shooting your shot genuinely, as opposed to just approaching, talking for 30 seconds and giving up and rejecting yourself. So that will make a big difference. But it could be in 100, it could take 1,000, right? Obviously if you have coaching and you have guidance, that it like good coaching and good guidance, it's gonna be faster. And then the more approaches you do is going to build momentum, is going to make each approach more likely to be successful, right? If you approach 50 women over 6 months versus 50 in one night, you're going to make not only more progress in the obvious sense, but if you do 50 approaches in one night, you're going to get into better state. You're going to get into flow. You're going to basically, your approaches are going to get better throughout that momentum you're building as well. So there's a lot of factors. I couldn't give you a clear answer because it could be anywhere from, one, but realistically like 100 to 1,000, depending on, do you get coaching? How much do you approach? Are you leading? Are you following like good strategy? Right. Or are you doing things that are like really cringe and weird? Um, and are you writing field reports and making sure that you're improving over time? There's a lot of different factors. Yeah, honestly, Austin is amazing for night game. Especially I personally, I mean, Dirty Six has its place, but especially West Six. So if you happen to live in Austin, you're watching this, definitely hit up like Buford's. I can't remember the other venue's name, but Buford's is really good. And the whole area of West Six is really good. All right, so I'm probably about to wrap up. I haven't declined anyone yet. I mean, if there would be, if I saw it was like a competitor or something, I might decline, but I haven't declined anyone's membership for the group yet. So maybe try again. Or maybe it's some like spam filter the website has that for some reason you triggered. Maybe by like spamming in other groups. I don't know. But does height matter in game? Yes, of course it matters. Is it something that can be overcome? Yes. I had a client once who was 5'4". I have the text. I don't know. I can't find it on a whim, but it was a guy who was in his 30s. He was 5'4", and he slept with 3 women in 1 week. And that's just one example, but short guys can do very well. Is it a factor? Yes, it's a factor. Is it an insurmountable factor? Like if you're 5'0", then it's going to be tough, right? If you're 5'0", I would probably wear like at that point, like platform shoes or something, right? Or, insole increasing things to at least get to like 5'2", 5'3". And then it's a lot more realistic. But if you're 5'0", you're going to have to like it. A lot of women are just instantly not going to give you and not going to be open to it. There's still a percentage of women. I don't know if it's 30%, 20%, 50%, whatever, but some percentage are not really going to care at all and will be open to, if your game is good, if you're charismatic, or maybe, your facial looks or whatever, they'll be open to it despite the height. But a lot of women care about height. It can be overcome. The shorter you are, the more difficult it is. But unless you're like super, super short, like 5'0", it's still very doable. And if you are 5'0", I mean, it's like, what are you going to do? Not try? Like, I believe it is possible, but yeah, it is going to be harder, right? I don't want to like sugarcoat it and say it's not going to be harder. It's still possible to have success, but you're going to have to make up for that disadvantage in a lot of other ways. And it would be even more important to maximize your looks, to maximize your logistics, make sure you're in a really good city. And, if I were 5'0", I'd first see what's possible by getting my game and everything really good. And if I found it was really hard, it might be the one case where I would consider like, moving to a country where people are short on average, right? Somewhere like the Philippines, for example. That would be, it would have to be a country that I would want to be in, not just for dating, right? But that would be where I would consider that. But I wouldn't give up until I'd actually I wouldn't do that until I genuinely put in effort first. Because I've only had one client who is 5'0", and I saw them actually they got very close to pulling on the boot camp, and I could hit them up and see what's happened since. But that's not a common thing, so I don't know how hard it would be to overcome it. I would consider just baby step going out sober. So make a goal to just go out, because I had a phase where I was drinking too much and kind of became dependent on it while going out. And so the way to get out of that is to just go out sober for at least just go to the bar, and then you're allowed to go back home. And so you're just detaching that habit, right? You're just detaching that connection between going out and drinking. And so you just go out, you do that for a while, and then you keep pushing yourself. But all you have to do is just go out sober, not drink, and then you can go back home, right? You just have to go to the bar, right? You just have to, and maybe even you just have to you can drive to the venue and you can just drive back, but at least you're just moving in the direction, and that's the goal. And then over time, you can make that normal. Because the best nights I've had have never been when I was drunk. I mean, have I pulled super hot women while drunk? Yes, but it's not even that enjoyable. You don't even remember it that much, right? It's not nearly as satisfying for you or her. And so the best nights I've had by far, where you get into the best state, generally sleep with the most attractive women, etc., have been when I was sober. It's not really different. I mean, there's slight differences. Any Western country is not going to be that difference. I've had plenty of clients in London online, and yeah, are there differences? Yes. Is it severe? No. And the grass is always greener, because I hear so many guys in the US talk about how it'll be way better in Europe, and then people in Europe, it will be way better in the US, right? In the UK, they're like, oh, I'll meet guys in the Vegas clubs will say, yeah, they're from the UK, and they're like, oh, these US women are all sluts. It's so hard in the UK, and then vice versa, right? And US guys will complain about how hard it is here, but it'll be easy in the UK. Now, if you're traveling from one to the other, partly it's easier because the accent is going to make you exotic, right? It's kind of either way, right? Being American in the UK or vice versa. And also, what people don't realize is when they leave their hometown, they tend to give themselves more permission to put themselves out there, right? To take risks, because they're not worried about their reputation, which no one gives a shit really about your reputation. It's this bullshit thing that we tell ourselves, but in their mind, they're more free. And that's a big part of why it might seem easier. Well, it is, because you're in a different mindset, and because they think your accent makes you exotic as well. There's plenty of guys in the UK who get laid, right? If you look at, there's scales or charts of how promiscuous different countries are. It's not like the UK or the women. You can look specifically at the women. The UK is not significantly less than the US, so therefore it's not relevant, right? You can just look at the data. Now, if you want the highest, it's New Zealand for some reason. The women are the most promiscuous, but pretty much every Western country, it's not that different. Let me see if I can find that chart. Promiscuity of women by country. All right, so I'm going to look up UK. Yeah, United Kingdom is 13 with, it says 9.8, I believe, is average for women. And United States is 15. 13 and 15. So right next to each other. So neither is a big difference. There goes that illusion. Yeah, see, 400 approaches is great, but 2 years, man, that's way too slow if you want to make real progress. At that rate, that's way too slow. 400 could be a month for me, especially when I wasn't doing boot camps every weekend and I was focused more on myself. 400, I mean, even sometimes almost 400 in a week, although that's certainly not the standard. I've been doing pickup, really started approaching. So I learned about pickup when I was 16, but I didn't do my first approach until I was 21. and I'm about to turn 33 in actually, what is it, like 10 days. So I've been doing it therefore for 12 years. I mean, obviously be very careful. Don't be direct. If you think there's a chance someone might be underage, don't like be sexual, right? Until you know for sure they aren't. And just you have to find out. But if it, to me, like if they think there's a good chance they're 16, I would say that's probably younger than I would be interested in anyway. All right, I'm going to see if there's any more good questions, but then I'm going to wrap up. That's a little bit that makes me want to ignore your question more. Now, I don't ignore questions. Uh, Basically, I'm answering questions that I think are interesting to people that are going to add value to other people. So if I didn't answer your question, it's nothing personal, although now it might be after that. It's nothing personal. It's because either the question wasn't relevant to many other people, or maybe it was just a weird question, or there's a number of reasons. But don't take it personally. I'm not answering literally every single question. I'm not like on contract that I have to answer every single question. And that response makes me think the question might have been a little socially unaware, because it's a very socially unaware to try to get me to answer your question. Disagree. I would disagree. I don't know where you heard that from, but I would say if you're really good in bed, you are far more likely to have women want to see you again. It's not the only factor, obviously, just overall how they feel around you, how deep the connection is, how much you gave them strong emotions being around you, how much you got them to invest in different levels emotionally and like even logically, etc. Um, However, if you make a woman have like 7 orgasms and she's used to having 0, or that almost never happens for her, yeah, she's gonna probably want to see you again. And since I've gotten better, because naturally I was very shy sexually, right, in bed when I was, I had one girl ask if this is amateur hour, things like that when I was, just barely not a virgin. Um, and then that was an issue, right? Like having women like stay around, but that became less and less and less of an issue over time. And it's great because over time, eventually, like if you're working, because I was working, I read books about how to be good in bed. The one I would recommend is Sex God Method. I watched even video courses. There was one by, I believe his name is Marcus London, called Squirting Mastery, things like that. I was intentionally working on that. It's part of your game, right? And it's also giving the women a better experience and yourself a better experience. So it's very much win-win. Um, I I after doing that, eventually women started saying like that was the best sex I ever had, or had X amount of orgasms. And it just makes the whole thing way better, right? If you're really good at picking up women and getting them to the point of hooking up with you, but then really bad in bed, well, that's not really the whole, like, you're missing a vital part of the whole equation. Um, I probably do. I don't remember. I've got like 500 videos or something, right? I probably do. I definitely cover it in my book, The Method. I know there's a whole chapter about physical escalation, including back at the house. So that's something you just look up my name, The Method, and you should be able to find a way to get a copy. I don't see why you would have to use your real name. I mean, you can use whatever name you want, I'm sure, right? I don't think they verify that it's your actual, like you have to use your ID or something. So you could use a pen name, right? And you could use a picture of someone else. I personally don't really care. Obviously, your personal identity isn't going to be like shared in any meaningful way, right? I'm not like I don't think you'd have to worry about that, but you can use a pseudonym or whatever. Do I buy Fresh Prince CEOs? I mean, maybe I'll cover the whole story about him and the sugar baby that he got pregnant. That might have also been a hooker, possibly. I don't believe his 1,000 lay count for a second. He does not seem like someone who's beyond wildly exaggerating things for marketing purposes, for getting more views. He seems to me like the kind of person that would do that. So I do not buy for 1 second his 1,000 lay count unless it's like, a lot of them are hookers or something. Just look at the way he carries himself. There's just no fucking way. Now, does he get laid more now because of his clout? And do some women sleep with him because of that? I'm sure they do, right? I'm sure there's a group of women, sugar babies, really, clout chasers, gold diggers, who will hook up with a guy like that, not because the raw attraction, not because, oh my God, he's so charismatic, but because he has a lot of clout. All right, so I've managed to go for an hour. It's funny how that works. I said 10 minutes, supposed to be doing something else, but it is whatever. I enjoy doing this. Got in the zone. But I should definitely wrap up soon. I got a lot of shit to do. But if you want more of my content, if you want the best value from my content that you can get for free, right? The best value you can get is coaching. That's certainly the most transformative way to get results. I mean, in my last 2 boot camps, both times I had clients pulling within the first 2 days, even though in one case, I think they hadn't pulled in like 8 months. And the other case, it was never in their life from a nightclub. So that's obviously the most transformative because, my client in Phoenix, I had a client who did more approaches in the last night than they had done in the rest of their life up to that point, right? That's the kind of thing that happens. They're also getting more numbers. They're also pulling, making out, etc. But that is the fastest way. But the second fastest way is with this free online mastermind group where at the very least you're not getting the in-person coaching, but you're getting off the sidelines and you're put in a position where you're expected to actually engage with the group, you're getting out of it what you put into it. So it's something where it's not just I'm watching content, I'm consuming. It's where you actually have an output. You're actually engaging. And the more you do so, you actually get rewarded for that. You get rewarded for that through the leaderboard system, through the ranking system, which you can learn more about the details of that by clicking that link and joining the group. It's completely free. The only reason not to do it is if you're just watching my videos for entertainment purely, just you like hearing me talk. That would be the only reason, right? If you're only watching this, you're married or something like that, you have no interest in doing pickup, then okay, I understand why you wouldn't do it. But otherwise, it's literally completely free and you're going to get a lot of value out of it. And it's something where you're engaging with me and you're engaging with the community and you're actually putting something into it as opposed to just watching content, which is a lot more powerful. I've made videos. I was diagnosed with panic disorder. I've had not only have I had panic attacks, but I've had panic attacks that are far worse than most people. I've gotten to the point of being certain I was dying, calling ambulances, stuff like that. So I've had severe panic attacks, and yet I've managed to get over it. And a lot of what has made my panic attacks get better is exposure therapy, doing things like approaching women that would trigger my anxiety and make it very severe. But then through getting used to it, through acclimating to it, that's what actually has been the best treatment that has reduced my anxiety overall. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap up, but make sure to join the group if you want to be a part of our live coaching calls. And if you want to take things a step further than just, watching content. And then if you are really serious about getting the best results possible and having a transformation over one weekend of, on average, this is average, doing about 100 approaches in one weekend. And I haven't had a single client in over 2 years now who wasn't able to get over their approach anxiety and approach, at least 40, 50, if not 100, 120 women during the boot camp, right? And a lot of the guys who've taken my boot camps hadn't ever approached or hadn't approached in years or had only approached a couple times. And then so many of these guys not only did a ton of approaches, but also got laid, sometimes lost their virginity, got laid, had a threesome, pulled a model for the first time in their life, built a rotation after the boot camp, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, I just heard, another one of the many success stories just today in my group. Oh, and it turns out, so some recent client just said he hooked up with a girl, slept with a girl from Phoenix. So there we go. So I was gonna read a different testimonial. I gotta what do you call it? Blur the number and stuff. But I literally just got that text. So another success story. That is the fastest way to get the most results and to really get the kick in the ass that a lot of people need. To where people are saying, "Oh, I've done 50 approaches ever in my life, or 0 ever in my life." This reorients your sense of what doing game is. That's what my boot camp does. It does a lot of things, right? It gives you feedback, helps you find your blind spots. We go over your infield and review it and show you specifically what mistakes you're making and how to fix them. But most importantly, it reorients your reality of what game is, of what pickup is. Because when you're used to doing 0 approaches or 3 approaches, 5 approaches, and not leading enough, most likely, and not showing enough intent and getting a lot of rejections, to building more momentum than you ever thought possible, getting into God mode, getting into state, getting to a point where you start looking forward to approaching women, where you don't need me to push you anymore, where you just go, go, go. It's all gas. Your foot's no longer in the brake, and you just start getting numbers. You start getting into a better mood. You start enjoying it. You have fun. I mean, one of my clients 2 weeks ago said that was the most fun they had in game, but then they followed it with, "I think, ever in my life," which is not really my initial goal, is to have fun on the boot camp. I know it's also challenging, but I hear that a lot, right? Like, not only did they get results, but they're having more fun with game, which is helping them get more results. And ultimately, that's what it's about, right? You could have a super high lay count or something. If you're not having fun going out, is it really worth it? What's the point, right? You also want to learn to make the process enjoyable for its own sake, to make it autotelic. So when you take a boot camp, what it does is it reorients, okay, what's normal, what I can do is 30 approaches a night, 40 approaches a night. I can get 10 numbers. I can start leading, making out with girls, very likely even taking someone home. And that starts to feel normal to you, right? Now you realize that your blueprint in your mind, the map in your mind that you previously had, was extremely limiting, right? It was covered by like a fog of war. And you thought that you could do, 1, 2, 3 approaches, and that was enough. And now you see what real game looks like by being around me, by being pushed, by being around the other clients. And that is why that is so powerful. So I highly recommend, if you're serious about getting results as quickly as possible, then I highly recommend looking into taking a boot camp. Let me quickly link the page where you can learn more and schedule a free call to see if I'm going to be going to your city or if there's a spot that we can make work. And I am actually touring Europe fairly soon. And yeah, I mean, my nearest one that has a spot available is going to be Chicago. Then I'm going to New York. I'm going to Miami. I'm going to go to Austin again just because I like it so much. And I'm going to go to Phoenix a few times. Probably will move there, or Austin, but I'm going to a lot of different cities. And if you're in a big city that I don't have scheduled, I'm open to scheduling it. It'll just be 2 or 3 months out where I actually have spots open, right? But the sooner you do that, the better, because the spots are getting farther and farther booked because I'm promoting boot camps more, quite frankly, because I'm putting more effort into it. And so you don't want, if you wait a month, there might not be any any availability for like 3 months. And then it might get to the point where, well, I'm going to Europe for a solid 6 months, and then I'm not going to be available for a long time. So that's what I'd keep in mind. But I'm going to do more of these live Q&As. I'm going to do, reaction videos. I'm definitely going to be getting more infield in the near future. The last thing I'll mention that I'll plug, sort of, is that I'm looking for a dedicated videographer, a part-time, probably like 10 to 20 hours a week, to film infield. And I'm actually a little bit flexible. I'm either going to be going to Phoenix or Austin, possibly San Diego, though that's less likely. So if you live in any of those places and you'd be interested in the idea, it's something where I'll be able to coach you for free in exchange for getting this footage, for getting infield footage, and you're being a part of the channel. And it's something that, if you're really serious about taking your game to the next level, and it sounds interesting to you, make sure to send me a text. Just text the word film to 702 to that number. So that's the last thing I'll mention, but that is something that I'm looking for, because I know the only way that I want to get to the point where I'm the number one voice in the space. And, there's different ways I could potentially do that, but the fastest and best way, and the way that will make me stand out the most, is just going all in on the infield, right? Like the videos I've had that have gone the closest to being viral have almost always been infield videos. The videos, and I also think you learn a lot from them. They have a lot of value. And no one really does it anymore, right? No one's willing to get infield. So it's something I need a new videographer to do it at a good level. But that's something I am really going to be pushing a lot more in the near future. So with that said, hope you guys enjoyed this live. I will almost definitely be doing another one tomorrow, and I'll see you guys then.